Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 2025 Ordinary Council Briefing. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. I would like to advise everyone that the audio and video of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that audio recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted. And councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality, and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, with that, item 1 is the declaration of opening. I declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. Before I proceed to the formalities, last night our newly elected members were officially sworn in and committed to upholding the city's elected members' code of conduct. And having had the privilege of presiding over that ceremony, I was reminded of perhaps the new beginning this represents for our council, and of the shared principles that we've all sworn to uphold: respect, integrity, transparency, and accountability. These values lie at the heart of how we work together and how we serve our community. They guide our conversations, our decisions, and the way we conduct ourselves both inside and outside of the council chamber. I am aware from years of experience that it can be challenging to apply these principles when there's differing opinions within the chamber and within our community. But all of us as elected members, all of us should remember that we are here to influence, but we're also here to be influenced. Our role is to have an open mind, to listen, and to make good decisions in the best interests of our community. I intend to do my very best to live by these values as our community's mayor, and I encourage all of us to do the same. If we approach our work with respect and with openness and with a shared sense of purpose, I'm confident that we can fulfil the duties that we owe to our community, who we have all sworn to serve faithfully, honestly, and with integrity. So, tonight's business. Tonight is a council agenda briefing, and tonight our job as elected members is to listen to the deputations being made to us by members of our community. We'll also have the opportunity to ask the city officers questions on any matters that are on the agenda for decision at next week's Ordinary Council meeting. And the big thing for all of us as elected members to remember about council agenda briefings is that council agenda briefings are not a forum for making statements or entering into debate. We'll all have that opportunity at next week's Ordinary Council meeting. So, heading back to usual programming, items for council, agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8.1, 8.2, 9, 11, 13 and 14 will be dealt with at the Ordinary Council meeting to be held on 28 October 2025. That takes us to item 4, which is attendances. Item 4.1 is apologies. We have received an apology from Councillor Blake D'Souza for this evening. Item 4.2 is approved leaves of absence, of which there are nil this evening. Item 5 is declarations of interest, and there's a few of them, so bear with me. Okay, here goes. Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared a financial and proximity interest in item 10.1.1 as some of the proposed listings either include or are adjacent to or are across the road from properties that are owned either directly or indirectly by persons who contributed to my re-election campaign in 2023. Councillor Stephen Russell has declared a financial proximity and impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 As my property is on the heritage list, adjacent properties to my property are on the heritage list. I know of persons whose properties are on the heritage list. Councillor Bronwyn Moore has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as I've been contacted by, met with and spoken to several residents affected by this item. None of them are known to me personally. My son attends Wesley College. Councillor Jacqueline Raison has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as one of my children is about to complete Year 12 at Wesley College, and in recent years I've participated in strategy think tanks at Wesley College with other business leaders. At no time have property or heritage matters been discussed with me. On this basis, I'm comfortable that I do not have any conflict of interest and can consider this agenda item impartially. Councillor Bronwyn Moore has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.2 as my son attends Wesley College. I note that Penrose College is not a party to this transaction. However, noting that it is likely to be used by Penrose College, and out of abundance of caution, I disclose that my daughter attends Penrose College and that I'm a board member of Penrose College. Councillor Jacqueline Raison has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as one of my children is about to complete Year 12 at Wesley College, and in recent years I've participated in strategy think tanks at Wesley College with other business leaders. Our family has not been involved with the rowing program at Wesley College, and at no time have rowing or boat shed matters been discussed with me by the college. On this basis, I'm comfortable that I do not have any conflict of interest and can consider this agenda item impartially. And Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest at item 10.4.3 as I know a number of the nominees. Councillors, does anyone have any other declarations of interest that they wish to make? I think Councillor Lees was first.
There we go. I would like to declare an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1. I know people who own properties on the proposed heritage list, and I previously requested that one of the properties on the list, or one of the properties being considered, be considered for inclusion on the city's heritage survey, or MHI at the time. But despite this, I believe I can consider this item with impartiality.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. You probably said it, but just to confirm, that was an impartiality interest?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Brenda Abrandis, I saw your hand go up.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd also like to declare an impartiality interest with respect to item 10.1.1, draft heritage list adoption. I know of someone who is not a closely associated person with me and their property is on the draft heritage list for adoption. The impartiality interest will not impair my decision making, which will be based on merit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Councillor Prendeville?
Thank you. Also for item 10.1.1 draft heritage list, I declare an impartiality interest as I've had communication with some of the homeowners and those connected to sites included in this item.
Thank you. Any other interests to be declared this evening, councillors? No. Okay. In that case, we move on to item 8.3, which is deputations. Before I move into deputations, I will say, for the benefit of new members and perhaps a refresher for existing members, that item 8.3 is where we hear deputations from our community about items that are on the agenda for decision at next week's ordinary council meeting. Each speaker gets up to 10 minutes to speak to us regarding those items, and after each speaker has finished their deputation, I will give councillors the opportunity to ask questions of the deputies. I ask all elected members to be kind with their questions. Speaking at a local government meeting can be a bit intimidating for many people, but we really do want to hear what our community has to say, so I'm sure you'll all be kind. I'd like to begin with inviting Ms Heidi Schmidt of South Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. Welcome, Ms Schmidt, and we look forward to your deputation.
Thank you. Good evening and a special welcome to our newly elected councillors. It's exciting. I'm speaking with regard to the local heritage survey undertaken for some of our community's important heritage buildings. With so many of our community's iconic buildings already lost forever, we now have a chance and an obligation to fully protect those that remain. The word heritage actually translates to inheritance. These buildings are therefore intrinsically our cultural and community inheritance. As a matter of conscience, it's crucial that our councillors all place genuine value on the cultural, architectural and historical integrity of our built environment and commit to protecting them now and into the future for our greater community. The city engaged an expert heritage consultant who thoroughly investigated and assessed several buildings, rating them in accordance with that expert assessment. These include Blue Waters Como. That building is included on a mural inside our wonderful new Coles. It's that important. Royal Perth Golf Course, Wesley College, houses on Hobbs Avenue in Como, 44 Angelo Street, which, by the way, was recently changed to 49 Forest Street for point of sale. The advice was it would be worth more if it was on Forest Street instead of Angelo Street. And that is an investment property, not a home. And also the Como and South Perth primary schools. A couple of councillors recently sought to downgrade the protection levels of some of those buildings. Wesley College also sought to downgrade the heritage area covered. This inherently puts those buildings at risk of being lost to our community forever. Once they're gone forever. These buildings are our community's shared history, our heritage, and therefore, as I said, our cultural inheritance. I've been a ratepayer for 34 years in the city. It's my inheritance. Hence, it's incumbent upon our councillors to protect heritage buildings for the entire community they represent. And that means not attempting to make changes to an expert report for the favour of a few. In this matter, councillors are not heritage experts. They are the laypersons, and it is therefore prudent to heed the advice of the expert. Heritage evaluations and respective levels that have been professionally assessed by an expert employed by the city should not be interfered with. For all these reasons, I urge our council, every one of you, to fully support the local heritage survey as assessed by the heritage consultant who is the expert, without any demotion or alteration to the values or levels of those heritage assessments made by the expert. It is fundamental common sense for our councillors to fully protect our community's heritage and inheritance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deputation, Ms Schmidt. Councillors, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Ms Schmidt about her deputation? Councillor Raison.
Ms Schmidt, thank you for coming to talk to us today. You mentioned 44 Angelo Street or 49 Forest Street.
Yeah.
And that you also mentioned that is an investment property. Can you clarify what you mean by that, or why you're wanting to inform us?
Put to previous council meeting that this was their home and they were looking to sell the home that they've lived in, and they have never lived there. It is purely an investment property that's been flipped to try and sell. And the advice from the agent, the previous agent who couldn't sell it, that agent was from Dalkeith, and he told them it would be a better price they would get for it if it were Forest Street and not Angelo. But yeah, investment, purely investment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Schmidt. Any further questions, councillors? No. Thank you very much for your deputation. I'd now like to invite Dr Mark Brogan of Kensington, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. Welcome to you, Mr Brogan. The microphone is yours and we look forward to your deputation.
Mr Mayor, before we start that, just seek an opinion from governance. A member that has a interest, a financial proximity interest, is it necessary to recuse during deputations?
Ms Fry.
No, you can stay for the deputations, but if anyone wants to ask questions of the actual item from council, then that's when you depart the room. So it's when you actually come into those questions later on.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Russell, and thank you, Ms Fry. Dr Brogan, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Special welcome to our new councillors and City of South Perth staff. As many of you will be aware, since the Heritage Survey process began way back in 2023, I've given a number of deputations and asked questions aimed at encouraging council to act decisively to protect the dwindling heritage of the City of South Perth. I have not been alone in doing this, and I would like to put on the record my thanks to Heidi Schmidt, to Bronwyn David, John Bassett, and the other heritage advocates who've come forward to actually put the case for more aggressive action on the heritage of the City of South Perth. In this context, I note also that we have the presence of the Vice President of the Art Deco and Modernist Society of WA, Mr Philip McAllister, here tonight, who will be giving a deputation on Blue Waters, that remarkable Art Deco building that is on Canning Highway and has been the subject of some fierce debate in previous meetings regarding its heritage status. I went through the recommendation for adoption and found that we had 49 places. That is 49 places proposed for formal inclusion in the City of South Perth heritage list, not the survey. So in noting that we have 49 places, I conclude and acknowledge that we have not succeeded in bringing about much needed change. The number is far too few. So it is with mixed emotions and a heavy heart that I make this deputation tonight, urging that the list be adopted. I am speaking for the adoption motion primarily because we have to start somewhere. We've had 2 years of often antagonistic and furious debate over heritage, and we need to make a start. So why the heavy heart? 49 places. Is this what council genuinely believes to be the real extent of places worthy of protection as heritage places by this LGA? In an earlier deputation in August 2024, I benchmarked the performance of the City of South Perth against other LGAs on heritage. The data I provided after extensive research provided a statistical view of Category 1 and 2 listings, current as of August 2024. The LGAs were the City of Vincent, the City of Bayswater, the City of Fremantle, Town of Victoria Park, City of Stirling, City of Subiaco, as well as the City of South Perth, at that stage working through its heritage survey. Of the sample LGAs, City of Fremantle had the largest listing of Category 1s and 2s at 919. I'll repeat that number, 919. City of Vincent was next with 287, followed by the City of Bayswater with 74. City of Subiaco had 64, Town of Victoria Park 54, and the field was completed by City of Stirling, which had 49. With formal adoption of the motion before us at next week's ordinary meeting, the City of South Perth will join the City of Stirling at the bottom of the table. We can and should be doing better. We are also underperforming in the identification of character retention areas. In Vincent and Victoria Park, areas and precincts receive protection through identification of character retention areas. City of Stirling also has a character retention guideline in place for the suburbs of Mount Lawley, Menora and Inglewood. And if you have been to these places, you will see the good work that this kind of guideline can achieve. Heritage protection area guidelines can work over whole areas, precincts and suburbs, extending protection across common fabric areas. I'm not going to spend more time dwelling on what has gone wrong with the current process, other than to say community advocate views on the significance of places were supported by the external consultant when City of South Perth got around to employing one eventually in response to demands for it to do so. The evidence is in attachment 1B for the meeting of the 24th of June 2025 at page 555 for everyone to see. In conclusion, I urge Council and the City of South Perth not to look upon the adoption motion as the end of the heritage journey, rather as the beginning. The City has the opportunity to work constructively with property owners who have objected to listing as part of the current process to overcome their objections. Work can also begin with progression of development guidelines for character retention areas. We have much more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation, Dr Brogan. Councillors, does anyone have any questions for Dr Brogan about his deputation this evening? No. Thank you very much for the deputation.
Pleasure.
I'd now like to invite Dr John Bassett of Como, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. Welcome to you, Mr Bassett. The microphone is yours and we look forward to your deputation.
Thank you and good evening, particularly to the new councillors. I'm probably going to modify some of what I say here because previous two speakers have covered a reasonable amount of this, but I'm speaking in support of the listing under 10.1.1, but also speak more broadly to council process. So just to recap, in February 2024, Council adopted the Local Planning Policy 8.1, the Heritage Conservation and Development. Nominations for places on the Council Heritage List were called over the month of February 2024. Following community nominations, the draft list was presented at the May 24 Ordinary Council meeting. At that meeting, the advertising of the list was adjourned until August 24 in recognition of some potential lack of understanding of the issues with councillors at that time. There was a workshop held for councillors on the 2nd of July 2024 to, I quote, further explain the draft LHS and future processes in respect to advertising and adoption. Future processes. It's notable that two councillors did not attend that briefing. At the August 24 meeting, the decision to advertise was again postponed to December so that an independent heritage consultant could be engaged, although the proposal to do so was overturned in the September meeting and the draft list was advertised in the December meeting. And that list was advertised over the January-February 2025 period. So the proposal to adopt the listing went to the June 25 meeting, and included in that report, as Dr Brogan has indicated, was a recommendation of an independent heritage consultant. Somehow, council found the money to employ one after all. So the expectation would be that properties listed at Category 1 or 2 would be earmarked for referral to the State Register of Heritage Places. Prior to that, owners and other interesting parties would have the opportunity to provide submissions on the final stage of listing. That stage culminates in the coming September 2025 Ordinary Council meeting next week. However, things went awry in the June 2025 meeting and again in the August 2025 meeting. Some councillors, in fact the ones who did not attend the heritage briefing, proceeded to change categories based on what appears to be lobbying by residents or owners of those properties. It appears that those categories of significance were not altered on the basis of heritage significance, but for reasons that are not fully clear. The opportunity for owners to make representations to Council for Properties to be removed from the submission list was in the comment period between the 1st and the 25th of September. Making submissions through the designated process provides transparency in that process. We've recently seen, and we see it in the briefing documents before Council today, where submissions have been made in relation to the listings. It's a transparent process. However, councillors cherry-picking properties does not provide transparency. The result is the councillors have subverted the process that was established by the council. That has left some of us in the community thinking that this council is dysfunctional. It may be that council officers have contributed to some confusion by stating that all Category 1 and 2 properties be forwarded for inclusion to the State Register. This seems to have set off some panic with residents in proposed Category 1 and Category 2 properties. Either way, what we've seen is an unclear process, a process that lacks some degree of transparency. So my perspective is that the findings of the independent heritage consultant should be setting the levels of the listings of the council heritage list. What is then forwarded for inclusion on the State Register is all the Category 1 and Category 2 properties that are broadly supported for protection by the community. In other words, where there is resistance from owners of properties recognised as Category 2, those properties retain the recognition of their significance on the South Perth Heritage List, but are not forwarded to the Heritage Council for inclusion on that state list. That would require the re-establishment of all Category 2 places that were altered by council, including, and this one I find particularly interesting, the Collier Pine Plantation, which was listed by the independent heritage consultant at Category 2. I'm pretty sure the pine trees didn't make any submissions to be removed from the list, but nonetheless, it's somehow disappeared. Other properties, Blue Waters, as we've already heard, the Hovia Terrace precinct, recognised as a significant precinct, 44 Angelo Street, 19 Glyde Street, and 2 Parker Street. So I recommend that the properties that are on the list be forwarded to the Heritage Council, but the actual council listing of properties be reviewed in line with the independent heritage consultant. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation, Dr. Bassett. Councillors, any questions for Dr. Bassett about his deputation? No. Thank you very much for the deputation. I'd now like to invite Ms Bronwyn David of South Perth, who is speaking against the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. Welcome to you, Ms David. The microphone is yours. We look forward to your deputation.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors, especially new councillors. Welcome. And thank you, staff, for being here as well. The reason I'm speaking against the motion rather than for is because, to my view, there has been a significant property not included on the heritage list. Now, as you've heard from the previous speaker, this whole process has been a bit of a roller coaster, and it seems to me, although I may be wrong, but we've ended up with a list of properties categorised from number 1 through to number 4, and reflecting their value in terms of heritage. Those with a designation of number 1 are regarded as having a lot of heritage. Those designated number 4 less, and then those designated 1 and 2, it was understood by the community that they would go onto the heritage list. So they're part of the bigger heritage survey, but then they would also form part of a smaller list, which means that they do actually get protection from the council in terms of they can't be knocked down without coming before council. And, that's important. But what we've ended up with is, as the previous speaker has indicated, a bit of a mishmash where, as I understand it, at least one Category 3 property is on the list, and that's Blue Waters, and at least one Category 2 property isn't on the list. So it's very confusing, it's not very transparent, and as the previous speaker said, I just don't think it represents a very good process. And it's very confusing for the community. My particular concern is regarding 44 Angelo Street, which is on the corner of Forest Street. It is the property that, as I understand it, has received a number 2 designation, but is not on the list, so therefore doesn't actually have any protection. The property, and I brought along my Identifying Australian Architecture book here, is of the interwar Old English style. Now, that's not going to set the world on fire. It's not the most exciting style, but it exists in a particular historic context. It was designed by the firm of the very eminent West Australian architect Talbot Hobbs, after whom Talbot Avenue in Como was named and Hobbs Avenue in Como, and to our understanding is the only domestic property in the city of South Perth that is designed by him. The Windsor Hotel, also designed by him, is on our list, but not this item of domestic property. As the heritage consultant employed by the council pointed out upon reviewing the list, that the property, the house, is of considerable significance, representing the city's interwar development, its architecture by the famed firm of J.J. Talbot Hobbs, its aesthetic value as an excellent example of the interwar Old English architectural style. Also, given that the heritage consultant went to say, given that 69 South Perth Esplanade was demolished in early 2019, this place is now a rare example of the interwar Old English architectural style in the locality. So from that sentence, we can understand exactly what happens to properties that don't receive heritage protection, and that is, they go. We no longer have them. Now, I know that a huge consideration for many of you when considering heritage matters are private property rights. But let's face it, much of what you do as a council impacts on private property rights. I mean, I would love to sell my property so it could be turned into a block of apartments. I would make a lot of money, but I can't because of the particular zoning of my area. And we all live within this. There are lots of things that happen and that you're called upon to adjudicate on which affect private property rights. So that's not the best argument to put against heritage matters. After all, why do we allow the council to impact private property rights? Surely if for no other reason than because we are a community and we want to have a nice community to live in, and we undertake the trade-off of all agreeing to work together to have property zoning so that we all sort of like suffer the same interference with our property rights so that we have a nice neighbourhood to live in. And that's something that the previous councillor Cridland indicated. He, mentioning in one of the debates in this chambers, talked about the fact that he used to live in a heritage listed home. He said, I think it's important to have these listings because those properties added to the amenity of the area. The area was so much nicer because those properties were retained, so I'm generally a supporter of keeping style, culture, architecture that is part of our history and heritage. Yes, it does impact on private property rights, but so do many other things. And the fact is that these properties didn't just acquire heritage because we stopped at some point and said, now we're prepared to recognise it. This house was always designed by the famous West Australian architect. It was always built for a very eminent West Australian. The chap for whom it was built was, I'm just looking at my notes, here we go, Major Hugh Annan Corbett, who was the first chair of the Melville Roads Board, in other words, the precursor to the mayor there. He's commemorated in Melville with a Hugh Corbett Park and Corbett Way in Booragoon. And I tell you what, if this property was built in the town of, in the city of Melville, they would probably list it like lightning. So it's it's always been built by someone famous, built for someone famous, having a particular style which is evocative of the era. That a purchaser perhaps didn't know of this before it was purchased isn't really an issue for us, because after all we fall back onto that principle of property law, which is caveat emptor. How fabulous to buy a house only to find that this is the only one in the city of South Perth to be built by a famous architect. So for all of those reasons, I would like the list to be re-examined and for number 44 Angelo Street to be added back onto it so that it is given the protection that we all would like it to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation, Ms David. Councillors, any questions for Ms David this evening? No. Thank you for your deputation. Okay, I'd now like to invite Mr Philip McAllister of South Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. Welcome to you, Mr McAllister. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your deputation.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. Welcome to the new councillors. I hope that you will give the matters being raised to consideration in your new roles. I am representing the Art Deco Society of Western Australia, which has had a long association with the City of South Perth in terms of heritage advice and heritage advocacy for Art Deco buildings, some wonderful Art Deco buildings that you have in the city. And many of those are on your list, and we are delighted to see that and support the proposed heritage list noted in item 10.10.1. I have to say I do support the comments of the previous deputation speakers about the importance of recognising and supporting the advice that you receive from professional heritage consultants because they do have a lot of experience. We rely on them ourselves and we would always take the advice of heritage consultants in terms of assessing buildings. And I think, in fact, that some of the requirements that all councils have in terms of the Heritage Act and the Planning Act, that your decisions should be unbiased and based on the heritage value. But I'm here really to support the proposed heritage list, but would recommend consideration, as the other speakers have said, about some of the discrepancies between the heritage consultants' advice and the list that's been proposed. In particular, the Society is concerned about Blue Waters, which is at number 426 Canning Highway. The Society recognises this as a very significant residential heritage building. It was recognised by the consultant. They're employed in the same way. However, we're concerned to see that it's been given a Category 3 classification in the proposed list, whereas previously a Category 2 classification was recommended. The statement of significance in the survey appropriately identifies the key heritage values of Blue Waters as its landmark qualities, historical associations and rarity, as a late example of Art Deco residential architecture in the city of Perth, as well as in the greater city of Perth, as well as within the city of South Perth. So you actually have a very important building in your local government area. So we note that the Category 2 previous listing has been changed to Category 3, and we would strongly recommend that that's reconsidered, that obviously the building remains on your heritage list as it is currently, but that the classification is reconsidered to Category 2. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation, Mr McAllister. Councillors, any questions for Mr McAllister this evening? Councillor Lees.
Thank you for your deputation, Mr McAllister. I understand you've got a lot of heritage background experience as a heritage architect.
Yes.
So, in your experience, does listing a property on a heritage list devalue the property significantly, or what are the benefits and disadvantages of having a property on a heritage list?
In all the time that I've been working in heritage and advising in that area, I would have to say that in almost all cases, the value of the property, if they're listed or even if they're put on the heritage register, do not decrease. In fact, in often cases, they do increase. Now, that's a generalisation, and you have to look at individual situations, but in most cases, there are benefits to landowners that they can therefore apply to the council for, and certainly with a registration, the Heritage Council of Western Australia provides heritage grants and other opportunities to assist landowners who own state registered properties to maintain them, to do conservation works to them, and to ensure that they are supported in their endeavours to maintain those places. So there are a number of significant opportunities. I think probably the other thing is that people often misguidedly see any heritage restriction or heritage listing, I guess, as a restriction on development. And I would point the council to the Cygnet Theatre, which is another wonderful Art Deco state registered place that you have within the city. And the fact that through good guidance of the Heritage Council and good intentions of the landowner and developer there, the Como Cygnet Theatre has been restored, and an apartment development is being developed on site that was vacant. It was originally picture gardens and car park, but and so it is possible to actually have the best of both worlds. You can keep the heritage as well as develop sympathetic new development around the site. So I think a lot of landowners need to have a bit of a more open mind to the issues that heritage bring, and they might find that in fact there are opportunities as well as what they might consider constraints.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Another question?
In terms of Blue Waters, do you think the significance is largely the exterior, or are you aware of the situation on the interior?
The Society's had the benefit of a number of social events at Blue Waters.
Oh, okay.
So we're well aware of the interiors of the building, and they are very much largely intact as they were designed originally. I mean, obviously furnishings and various things have changed over the years, and people have put their own influence into the interior of the house, and of course we welcome that and think that's a good thing. But the building interior is largely intact as well, as is the exterior.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Lees and Mr McAllister. Councillors, Councillor Razor.
Thank you for your deputation, Mr McAllister.
You're welcome.
I just thought, while I've got you here, just to draw on your expertise, as a council, I'm interested to hear from a number of people this evening about the number of properties put forward, and that, in the view of some, it's a low number. As a council, my understanding is that we're relying on the advice of one expert consultant. Do you think that is adequate, one expert consultant, and what would you say is best practice? And if it's not your area of expertise, then please don't feel like you need to.
I guess I'd have to say that it's difficult to answer your question because I'm not familiar with the background, the briefing of that consultant. I would have to say that normally it's my experience that a council would only employ one consultant. They might talk to a number of consultants to make a decision on which one, but you would only employ one consultant and take the advice of that consultant. We're lucky to have a number of professional consultants, and a large number that could provide advice to the city, but I'm not I'm not familiar with the background of that process, so I don't think can comment on it. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Raison and Mr McAllister. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Lees.
Sorry. Mr McAllister, you would be well aware of Talbot Hobbs and his significance as an architect. Can you just enlighten us a bit on that, or is that putting you on the spot here?
A little bit. I probably should have, or I should refer to some of the documentation that you can find even on the web about George Talbot Hobbs, but he is one of our most significant architects. He's also one of our most decorated generals in Western Australia. He played a significant role in World War I. He started the practicing in Western Australia in the gold rush days in the late 1890s, and then closed his practice and went to war. And when he returned, he resumed the practice. He had practiced with a number of other architects at various times, and he's responsible for a large number of very important state-registered significant buildings. The Burt Hall is one that comes to mind straight away. It's St George's Cathedral. There are a large number of, there's a monument to him in Stirling Gardens. So, you know, he's a very important figure in Western Australian history as well as West Australian architectural history. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Lees and Mr McAllister. Any further questions for Mr McAllister, councillors? No. Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'd now like to invite Ms Lena Jatchman. I hope I've pronounced that right. Close enough by the looks of things? Okay, thank you. And Ms Lorica Story, who are speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.2. Welcome to you both. The microphone is yours. We look forward to your deputation.
Good evening, Mayor and elected members and city staff. Thank you for awarding us a chance to address Council tonight. I'm Lena Jetschmann, I'm a town planner from Rowe Group. This is Lorica Story, the Director of Finance and Resources of Wesley College, and we are also with Ross Barron, the head of Wesley College. And we are here to express our support for the officer's recommendation on item 10.1.2, the boat shed lease. I will now hand over to Lorica to just say a brief few words, and we'll be available for any questions should anything come up at the end of the deputation. Thanks.
Thank you, councillors, for your time this evening for this deputation for what has been a long journey with the City of South Perth and Wesley for the development of the rowing shed on the foreshore. Ultimately, this lease is, I guess, the logical conclusion to conversations that have occurred over a number of years. I believe that number of years is around 5 to 6 years that we have been in discussions with this. So I'm open to questions in relation to the lease and noting that the lease terms are in keeping with policy and ultimately it is a logical conclusion to historical conversations.
Thank you both. Councillors, do we have any questions for Ms Jetschmann or Ms Story? That was easy. Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Mr Joe Algieri of South Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.3.2. I did see he just stepped out a moment ago. Oh, Mr Algieri, perfect timing. You're up. Not at all. Welcome to you. The microphone is yours. We look forward to your deputation.
Thank you and good evening, Mr Mayor, elected members, and a warm welcome and congratulations to the newly elected members, staff and members of the gallery, Joe Algeri, Planning Consultant and Director of Altus Planning, and I'm here representing the landowners of number 3 3rd Avenue, Kensington, as referenced in item 10.3.2 of your agenda, and this is to initiate scheme amendment number 2 to local planning scheme 7. I'll be brief, as I don't believe or hope there's nothing particularly controversial about this item. For those of you that know it well, the site has been somewhat derelict for a number of years, previously occupied by the squash courts. In fact, it looks probably no different than it did in 1976, other than 40 or 50 odd years have taken their toll. The landowner is committed to revitalising the area by rezoning the land to residential with a proposed density coding of R17.5, which is a modest increase over the R15 that surrounds it. The ultimate intention with the amendment is to then subdivide the land into 3 residential lots, 560 and 562 square metres. Each will then accommodate a single dwelling. We say that these future homes will not only enhance the streetscape, but will also reflect the character and the scale of surrounding residential properties that form part of the well-known Kensington character. The proposal is effectively a downcoding, and what I mean by that is that the current local centre zoning, if it were retained and a redevelopment along those lines was pursued, could potentially encapsulate a residential component and a mixed-use development of up to R40. And in that hypothetical scenario, the resulting built form could have a significantly different impact on the streetscape and the local amenity. And we say that such an outcome would possibly be less sympathetic with the existing community and less compatible with the existing residential character of the area. We believe that this proposal offers a far more appropriate and balanced outcome, and we say it would align with the expectations of the local community and supports the city's broader planning objectives. We support the officer recommendation, and we sincerely thank them for their work to date on the matter, and we now respectfully seek your endorsement to proceed with the scheme amendment process. And those of you that know it well, it is a reasonably lengthy process, unfortunately. And on that, I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Algeri. Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr Algeri in respect of his deputation tonight? Councillor Lees.
Thank you for your deputation, Mr Algeri.
You're welcome.
Can you just clarify for me what the difference between the surrounding properties at R15?
Correct.
And you are requesting R17.5?
Yes.
So what is the difference in terms of subdivision and built form capacity?
It really is the minimum and average lot sizes. Now, the logical thing would have been to stick to the R15, but then we would have been short to create that third lot. And the difference, as the report correctly points out, if you look at lot sizes in the immediate locality, they range from 4 to about 800. The 3 lots will be, I think, 2 of them at 560 and 1 at 562. In terms of lot frontage and the type of built form, at a human level or looking at the properties, no one will ever notice the difference. So I don't think it's going to cause any sort of anomaly or some sort of aberration that will look out of place.
So sorry, How many square metres are you short?
I don't have the table, bad plan, I don't know the table one off the top of my head, but it would be short to achieve the 3 lots. I don't know how many square metres off the top of my head.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? No. Thank you for your deputation, Mr Algieri.
Thank you.
All right, that's all of the deputations for this evening. So we now move on to item 10, which is the draft October reports. Item 10 is where we go through the reports provided by the City Administration one by one, and councillors will have the opportunity to ask any relevant questions that councillors might have for the City officers on each item. All questions should be brief and concise and should avoid in engaging any unnecessary arguments or statements of facts or expressions of opinion. But I will remind everyone that this isn't your only opportunity to seek more information from the City Administration. All elected members are welcome to contact the City CEO or the relevant directors offline if you have additional questions or require some further explanation that perhaps is better conducted offline as distinct from during a formal meeting like tonight. And just before I pass over to Mr Scott for item 10.1.1 specifically, I do note that both Councillor Russell and myself have declared financial and proximity interests in this matter. I will now leave the chamber for the duration of this item, but before I do, I'd like to invite the Deputy Mayor to take my place as presiding member for the duration of the questions on this item. If someone could please come and retrieve Councillor Russell and myself after the item is concluded, I'd be grateful, and I'll see you all shortly.
Item 10.1.1, Draft Heritage List Adoption. The City of South Perth is required to establish and maintain a heritage list to identify places within the district that are of cultural heritage significance and worthy of built heritage conservation. This report presents the draft heritage list for the purpose of adoption.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, does anybody have any questions? Councillor Prendeville.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I just have a question for the administration in relation to the deputations that we heard this evening. I suppose a question to the administration regarding the process in which sort of that we've gone through with heritage, making note of some comments about, you know, perhaps proper process wasn't followed, perhaps it was dysfunctional, perhaps administration added to confusion. So just an opportunity, I suppose, for, you know, if the administration had any comments to the process that we have taken, and also making note to the recent moves on and off the list, why we didn't just change the categories then, and, you know, the need for that process and how we have followed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendeville. Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The comments I'd like to make is that the administration has followed the recommended process in accordance with the Heritage Council's guidelines. And I can explain through some of the confusion, but effectively when a general review is undertaken of a local heritage survey, the initial stage is a call for nominations from the community. And at that point in time, members of the community can nominate places, and it may not be their own place, for potential inclusion in the local heritage survey. After that process has been undertaken, the City reviewed a lot of information we had from that process. So the community provided new information to inform the survey, and we also undertook our own research and reviewed the different places on the local heritage survey and came up with the categories in accordance with the guidelines on what we thought was appropriate. We'd advised Council at that time that if there were any objections received to the categories during the formal consultation process, we would engage the services of an independent heritage consultant to provide advice on whether the category was appropriate or not. So once council resolved to then advertise the local heritage survey, the owners of the properties were notified, and there was the opportunity for broader members of the public to also provide comment on those categories. You can see in the report that was presented to council that we then engaged that independent consultant who provided recommendations on some of those places. The majority of the recommendations that the city made in terms of those places were reaffirmed by the consultant. There were a few places that were recommended to either have them decreased or increased. All of that information was provided to council for them to make a decision on whether or not to adopt the local heritage survey or not. The nature of surveys is that there is a lot of community interest, and so council did defer the local heritage survey a few times, and it's open for council to do that. It's appropriate for council to seek further information or to have further workshops or to provide more time for members of the public to ask questions if required before making a decision. So I wouldn't say that deferring an item results in poor governance. I feel like council should be properly informed before they make a decision. After the local heritage survey was then adopted by council, we used that information to inform the draft heritage list. When the draft heritage list was compiled, as previously advised, we included all properties that were category 1 or 2 on the local heritage survey to be used to inform the list. And if you recall at the time, it advised council that that was the city's recommendation, but it's open to council to only include category 1s, to have 1 to 4. It was completely open to council as to which ones would be included. That process has nothing to do with the state heritage list. The city has never advised that category 1s or 2s would be referred to the State Heritage Council. Those properties would be used to inform the local heritage list only, which is what has occurred. When the draft heritage list was presented to council, council had resolved to remove some of the properties from the draft heritage list prior to advertising. It is open to council to do that. There are no requirements in the regulations as to which properties are to be included in the heritage list. It's simply recommended in the heritage guidelines that the local heritage survey informs the heritage list. But it would be open to council to even have just one property on the heritage list if it wanted to, as long as it has a heritage list. That is the only requirement. So in terms of that process, obviously council then resolved to remove places prior to advertising. The city has then only undertaken the formal advertising to the properties that have been included on the draft heritage list, and that is what has been presented to council as part of this agenda for adoption. If council sought to change any of the categories in the local heritage survey, even though that's already been adopted, there is a process for that. It's a place-specific review, and that can be undertaken separate to considering the heritage list. If council seeks to delete places on the heritage list as part of considering this, it can also choose to do that. The only thing that council can't do is to choose to now add places on the heritage list without formal advertising first having been undertaken with those landowners. So if council was looking to include any property that isn't otherwise presented on the draft heritage list, the city would be recommending that we first either amend this heritage list and it goes back to advertising. That's not my recommendation, because I think we need a heritage list in place because there's a statutory requirement to have a heritage list in place. But rather it would be that we instead go through the formal process of writing to those landowners, advising that their properties would be considered for inclusion on the list and those properties potentially added on at a later date.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Lees.
Sorry, I've got a fair few questions. Just in reference to your comments then about the local heritage survey process, you said that it was a question of going out to community and asking them whether they knew of any more properties that should be included on it. So there wasn't a full review done of properties in South Perth to determine if there's any others, or we're just relying solely on community putting their hands up?
Thank you. Director Shaw?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, the city had various requests from the community in the past and looked at that past information in terms of what properties we thought would be included. We also reviewed all of the properties on the former municipal heritage inventory to see whether they still existed or not, to see whether they should be recorded and updates in that respect. And then when we went out for the initial call for nominations, we took the information from the community to see if there were any other places that we'd missed, or whether there was any other new information that could be added to the statements of significance that would be used to inform the draft local heritage survey.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my next question was through the Deputy Mayor, sorry. We've got to get used to the processes. I'm coming to this late in the day, so I'm just wondering how many places were identified in the Heritage Survey as Category 1 and 2 that were then downgraded, and how many places on the list were removed from the list before advertising?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If you just bear with me, I have the previous minutes. So in terms of places that were modified as a result of the advice from the heritage consultant for the local heritage survey, there were 7 places. And as part of that council decision, council also made changes to a number of places to change the categories, which were 6 places. And then in considering the heritage list, there were 3 places that were deleted from the draft heritage list prior to advertising.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillor Lees, do you have a further question?
Yes, I do. So of those 6 places on the heritage survey that were altered, I'm assuming they were all downgraded.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The recommendations from the heritage consultant increased the places,
yes,
and there were other places that council had changed from level 2 to level 3, so downgraded the places.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillor Lees, do you have a further question?
I do have a further question.
Go ahead.
I know that Wesley College are concerned about the boundaries of the heritage place, and I just wanted to clarify how the place boundaries are identified normally. My understanding is it's cadastre, but if you're able to confirm that, and what are the proposed boundaries of the place, of the Wesley College place, based on?
Thank you. Director Shaw?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So in terms of including the place itself, you're right, it's the actual cadastral boundary, it's the address of the property. But then included in the place record is the statement of significance, and that includes the level of detail about what features on the site are the actual cultural heritage value. So for example, you may have a site that has numerous buildings but only has one building that has the cultural heritage value on the site. So in practice, when a development application is then received for that site, if the works are occurring far away from the actual building that has the cultural heritage significance, it would be looked favourably upon because it has no impact on the heritage value of the place itself. What we'd be looking for is to see where the location of the future development works are in relation to the heritage values of the place itself. In terms of Wesley College, the entire site, so the address of the property has been listed, but the values of the place, I understand, are the hall, I think, yeah, further down, and the chapel that's there, yeah.
Thank you for that answer.
Councillor Lees, do you have a further question?
I do.
Go ahead, thank you.
It was mentioned in the planning report, sorry, that there are exemptions under clause 61 of the deemed provisions in terms of internal works or a variety of works. So if Wesley College were doing works to a building that is not listed as significant, would that then be exempt, internal works be exempt from development approval?
Director Shaw?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, does anybody else have a question? Councillor Harling?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a number of questions. Firstly, the distinction as between the local heritage survey, which can cause confusion over against the heritage list as contained within the Planning and Development Local Scheme Regulations. The local heritage or the heritage list is contained under the regulations, that is the scheme regulations, do not have a requirement to include categories. You've chosen to include categories which are ordinarily that which is part of the local heritage survey. What was the basis to that view?
Thank you. Director Shaw?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Heritage Council provides a template in how we would like to see heritage list set out. And so the actual category of the place isn't on the list itself. It is in the local heritage survey, as you've identified. But it just follows the template from the local heritage survey.
Now,
thank you, Director Shaw. Councillor
through
Harling, do you
you,
have another
Deputy
question?
Mayor, I'm sorry I cut you off. That is the assessment of the local heritage places. That's the guideline adopted by the Heritage Council of November 2022.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, I believe it's the creation of local heritage lists. I can find the document for you. It's the West Australian Government's guidelines for establishing a heritage list.
Okay, through you, Deputy Mayor, the form approved by the Heritage Council of Western Australia, if we are to look at that form that is approved, that doesn't include those categories.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's correct. It's in Schedule 1 of that document. We've included that to make it clear what the categories are as it relates to the local heritage survey.
Right. So if, for the purpose of the heritage list, we are to understand the nature of the heritage ascribed to those places, it is not at least to be considered as against whatever the category might be. In other words, to some extent, at least for the purposes of the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme Regulations, the categorisation may be considered to be redundant because it's used for a survey, but not for the purpose of the list.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, that's correct. So Council can choose to have Category 1s, Categories 1 to 4. It could have, it is irrelevant. The local heritage survey is just used to inform the list.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
So,
Councillor Harling, do you have another question?
Yes. So if my understanding is then correct, it follows, does it not, that the categories ascribed under the survey and how that might inform the list don't have any particular ultimate relevance to play insofar as we may consider which is first, second or third category, because ultimately our job before us is to establish a heritage list.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I now understand that. Can I, through you, Deputy Mayor, just ask some more questions? The local planning scheme regulations under which we're proposing to adopt a heritage list includes built heritage conservation and a heritage area as defined in the Schedule 2 as the two categories. I'll follow on, I mean that's contained within the document. In our minutes, or sorry, in our agenda, it speaks about support for places proposed to be included on the heritage list. That's a term, if I read that, would you agree, is really from the Heritage Act when we consider the surveys, heritage surveys?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I agree. And unfortunately, the planning regulations don't define place. So the distinction between the two is that the places that we have included are the places identified with their address and the place numbers that have been provided in the local heritage survey. but at this point in time, we have not proposed any heritage areas.
Thank you. And so that I'm clear, that's because this is the way it works, isn't it? That the heritage assessment is to be in the form approved by the Heritage Council of Western Australia under Clause 11.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just to clarify, which section are you referring to for the heritage list?
Schedule 2 of the deemed provisions, so the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme Regulations 2015, 11.2 says that a heritage assessment must be in a form approved by the Heritage Council of Western Australia.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So a heritage assessment is the assessment of a place that's typically undertaken by a heritage consultant in the assessment of a development application.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, you've distilled where I'm going to, and ultimately, when we look at place, just to develop that just a little further, we won't find a place separate, the definitions built heritage conservation and heritage area, as is concluded as in the definitions of the scheme regulations, we won't find that within one of the guidelines, and that's because the guidelines have principally been drafted with the heritage survey, a local heritage survey under the Heritage Act 2018 in mind, isn't it?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yes, that's correct. So the local heritage survey is created under the Heritage Act, whereas the heritage list is created under the planning regulations. At this point in time, Council has adopted the local heritage survey under the Act and is considering the heritage list under the regulations, and the City has not proposed local heritage areas at this point in time.
And through you, Deputy Mayor, and I apologise, and so what we will not be doing through any adoption is changing anything by way of the heritage survey. We're just looking to adopt a heritage list as mandated by Regulation 8.1.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, that's correct. Should Council seek to change any of the categories of places, that would be a separate item that would need to be considered by Council.
Thank you, and I apologise for putting you through your paces, Ms Shaw. I'm grateful. But when I then read the mandatory requirements of Regulation 11.2, that sets out that a heritage assessment must be in the form adopted by the Heritage Council of Western Australia. In my decision making, I should have close regard to whether or not the assessment was carried out in accordance with that form. Would you agree?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, so that would be in relation to a future development application for a heritage protected place. There would be a heritage assessment that may be required and undertaken as part of that, and if you were to make a decision on that application, you would need to have due regard to the heritage assessment undertaken, and that assessment should be undertaken in accordance with the form from the Heritage Council.
Yes, but sorry, through you again, Deputy Mayor. Do you also accept that that would largely be the process by which we are going to look at any expert report which may have been received, and that is whether or not it, in large measure, adopts the criteria as set by the Heritage Council?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My interpretation of Regulation 11 relates to a heritage assessment that's undertaken as part of a development application process and not a heritage assessment that's otherwise undertaken as part of the formulation of a heritage list.
And thank you for that. And accepting that, we still, however, you would go to the guidelines as set in order to determine what areas are of cultural heritage significance of a character of an area to which the scheme applies. That's the case, isn't it?
Sorry, what was the question?
So under Regulation 9, I'm just looking at what we need to decide for ourselves, and that says, if in the opinion of the local government, special planning control is needed to conserve and enhance the cultural heritage significance and character of an area to which the scheme applies, the local government may, by resolution, designate that such an area as a heritage area. So if I can, perhaps you're waiting because there was no question at the end of my statement. What I'm grappling with is the objective criteria by which we are required to make decisions in terms of assessing the expert report that we've received. I mean, obviously, no expert report that anybody receives will just be adopted blindly. And there's the borough charter process. You're familiar with that? Yes? And there's also the assessment criteria, which at least is used for local surveys. And then those assessment criteria, we can look at those and compare that to the expert report. Would that be a valid way within which we assess the expert report that you've received and then determine that as against the individual places for which there's been a report given?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I think that would be appropriate. So you could use the local heritage survey guidelines that provide criteria in terms of what constitutes cultural heritage significance, which may be historic value, aesthetic value, scientific value, social value. And you could consider those values in terms of whether a place has cultural heritage significance or not. And that was used by the independent heritage consultant to inform the categories and whether or not it be included in the local heritage survey. The city's approach was then to say those places that were categorised as 1 or 2 could be then used to inform the local heritage list. But that's not a requirement, so council does not have to adopt just 1s and 2s. It could adopt the whole list or none of the list. It's open to council to do that. But the planning regulations themselves don't actually provide criteria in terms of what needs to constitute the heritage list itself. So Regulation 9 in respect to the heritage areas doesn't refer to a specific place. Regulation 9 relates to where a local government is seeking to establish a local heritage area, and to do that it first needs to create a separate local planning policy and consult with landowners and do community consultation prior to establishing that area as a heritage area. And then any property within that local heritage area would require development approval, even if the place is not contained on the heritage list.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and it's just assisting me with the decision-making process that I need to go through. But I think we've left behind the question of categories because we've all agreed that that's under the provisions of the surveys. Now what we're really doing is considering a heritage list. And in coming to that view, there's the Regulation 8, which speaks about built heritage conservation, and there's Regulation 9, which speaks about cultural heritage and character of an area. And then in looking at the assessment, there's the various criteria that's contained, and we can go over that, but not necessarily the aesthetic value, etc., etc. Now, what I'm grappling with, and I've had a look at the borough charter, what I'm grappling with is which areas within what we've got, just leaving only on the agenda what we've got before us tonight, which areas are those which are considered to be built heritage conservation in accordance with Regulation 8.1, and which are those areas which are cultural heritage significance and character areas to which the scheme applies as a heritage area. So can you just help us, because if you want me to use an example, I will. Okay, because I think we would agree that we can't find the distinction in exercising our powers, can we?
Do you need that question clarified?
Okay. We can't see the distinction between what is contained in the requirements for built heritage conservation and those areas of cultural heritage significance and character of an area to which the scheme applies.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, so my interpretation of Clause 8.1 is effectively that if a place has been identified as having cultural heritage significance, it's then considered to be worthy of built heritage conservation. So effectively, if council has determined that a place does have cultural heritage significance, and it can use the local heritage survey to provide guidance in that respect, it could then form the view that that place is worthy of built heritage conservation that would otherwise be placed on the local heritage list.
And through you, Deputy Mayor, thank you for that. So what would be the reason for why the administration then, or the expert on whom it's relied, have interpreted the provision without saying "and worthy of built heritage conservation." Did that play any role to part in the decision making? Were those words informing the way within which what was considered to be significant being included on the register and those that are not? Or did it only look at the first part of the clause and are of cultural heritage significance?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, the city took all category 1s and 2s and used that to inform the list. And as previously advised, it's open to council to pick any number of places.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm a very simple man, I just want to leave the cultural heritage surveys to one side for a moment, because that's a different process from which we're engaged in. I understand that that was the process that you've come to consider what would be heritage within the heritage list, but it's a separate and different process as is concluded under the scheme regulations. So I'm just trying to work out, as it stands at the moment, when I read what's in this list that we've got, I'm trying to then marry that up with an expert's report, and I'm finding gaps because I don't read what's of cultural heritage significance and worthy of building heritage protection conservation in one instance, and in the other instance under Regulation 9, those areas of cultural heritage significance and character of an area. Now, that's creating me a challenge when I'm going through, because what we need to do in decision making is properly rely on the words contained in the regulations, then consider those as against the expert report that we've received, then marry it up with what we've received by way of the proposed agenda, and that's where I am struggling, because it doesn't flow, it's not following the process. So my very small mathematical brain has a significant problem with coming to a view as to how these are finding their way within the heritage list, which we're required to adopt, and I accept for given that you have gone through the process of the heritage survey and the categories and adopted that in the first instance as the process, and I think that was explained. Categories don't matter, but what I'm trying to really grapple with is marrying those things up. So I've come to a decision which follows, which has a logical foundational basis, particularly if I'm affecting those matters of private property. We heard some things about zoning tonight, where people's private properties are affected by zoning, and people want to know why, and good questions. Now, of course, this is a matter of affecting people's property in another way. We want to know why, and we're just trying to, I'm trying to do that. So I've given you enough time to think about that.
If I may, through the chair, I think we'll need to take the questions on notice because they are getting a bit complex, and I do recall reference to Regulation 9, which talks about cultural areas. The item doesn't propose any cultural areas to be included on the list. So I think probably best, so we don't confuse both council and the public, that maybe we will take the questions on notice, and happy to accept any follow-up questions on the matter.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And if I may...
Director Shaw, did you have something to add to that?
Through Deputy Mayor, I think I can just answer that one briefly, if you don't mind, because I think the link you're probably looking for is the relationship between the local heritage survey and how we then use that to inform the list. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
It's how you use the expert report in informing the consistency with what's required by the regulations.
Okay. I'll take that on notice.
You take that on notice? It's just, thank you. And then I said that I'd just indicate some example, and we'll do that. One example is of a place is, for example, the golf course on Labouchere Road. It indicates that it's a place, it seems. It's suggested that it's of cultural heritage significance, and heritage, it should be considered to be a heritage area. Now, that's obviously not a built heritage conservation, so it must be falling within the cultural heritage.
Councillor Halling, did you have a question?
I'm trying to understand why this is a place included as it is as a golf course.
Director Shaw?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So in the statement of significance, it refers to its inclusion on its social value, being given it was used for recreational pursuits for a long period of time, and its aesthetic value under the survey, not the list. So council could choose to not include it in the list as it does not consider to have any cultural heritage significance.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillors, does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Lees.
Sorry, through Deputy Mayor. Am I correct in understanding that 44 Angelo Street, because there's a bit of confusion in the report for me, it was proposed as a Category 2 by the independent consultants, and it is still a Category 2 on the Heritage Survey, but it was removed from the draft heritage list because there was an administrative mistake in the owner not being aware of the proposal to put it on the Heritage Survey.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So 44 Angelo Street, which is place number 85, that was originally drafted in the local heritage survey by the city as a Category 3 place. There were submissions received during the consultation period that recommended that that place be increased. The independent heritage consultant then reviewed the place and recommended Category 2. When council considered the local heritage survey, it adopted it as a Category 2 place. It was then included in the draft heritage list on the basis of it being a Category 2 place. The owner made a deputation advising that they had not been provided correspondence advising them of that, and council then resolved to remove that place from the draft heritage list. And so that owner has now not been consulted on its inclusion in the draft heritage list because it's not proposed to be included in the heritage list. So that property could be retained as a Category 2 on the local heritage survey, whilst also not being included in the heritage list.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillor Lees, you have another question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Director Shaw, for the response. So am I clear in thinking that we are not in a position to put it back on the heritage list now, but we would need to put it out for through a separate process of advertising?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, that's correct. The planning regulations do not allow a place to be included in a heritage list unless the owner has been provided written notice of the reasons for its inclusion and provided the opportunity to make a submission.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Thank you. Councillor Lees, you have another question? No?
Does someone else want to?
Councillors, does anybody else have any questions on this item? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think just, you know, like Councillor Halling, we're playing catch up here, and we appreciate your, you know, answering our questions. In the last little while, there have been a number of community members or people affected potentially by these listings, and a key area of confusion seems to be where an entire address is included, even though there are only 1 or 2 or 3 buildings or whatever they're called, significant, they've got a significant listing on there, you know, 1 or 2 things. So my question in relation to that is the city legally required, well, let's just use the example of Wesley College because it's one of the, members of our community affected. Is the city legally required to include the whole of Wesley College on the city's heritage list?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council could resolve to not include Wesley College on the list at all if it chose to do so. Wesley College is already on the State Register of Places, and it then automatically becomes what's known as a heritage protected place for the purposes of our planning regulations. And the effect of that is that a development application is required regardless. So even if council chose to remove Wesley College from its local heritage list, a development application would be required and we would liaise with the Heritage Council for works on the site, given it may impact the state valued places.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillor Rosen, you have another question?
Yes, so would I be right in saying then that putting Wesley College onto our heritage list makes no difference to any future planning requirements? Does anything change, as an example, for Wesley College?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, because the development application is required regardless.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Lees. Oh, Councillor Brenda Brandis.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've got a couple of questions, hopefully fairly straightforward. Could I just seek some clarity from the administration with regard to two items? One is the Collier Pine Plantation and its exclusion, and also I was unable to find, but maybe I missed it, was St Martin in the Fields Church. Has that been included in the listing? Thank you.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So with respect to the Collier Pine Plantation, the recommendation from memory was a Category 2 place in the Local Heritage Survey. And when that matter was presented to Council, within the body of the report, there was a recommendation from the City that that be reduced to, from memory, Category 4. And the reason being is that the City sought to not include that in the future heritage list because it meant that a development application would otherwise be required to maintain all of those trees. And given the fact all of those trees are on land that's already owned and managed by the City, the recommendation was that we wouldn't then receive subsequent development applications to ensure those trees are kept safe.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Brandis.
Thank you very much, Director Shaw, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just for the clarification with regard to the Collier Pine Plantation, does that plantation receive any federal protection with regard to the black cockatoo habitat?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sorry, just in regards to your previous question, we're just reviewing the list to see, and we'll take that one on notice to check for you. In regards to federal protection, that legislation requires the applicant or the developer to actually undertake the referrals in respect to black cockatoo habitat. So a development application could be lodged and approved by a decision maker, and the onus is then on the developer to do a separate referral outside of that process to ensure that relevant habitat trees and the like are protected.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Any more questions? No. Councillor Lees, did you have another question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So, Deputy Mayor, my question is, in terms of Wesley College, if the college is suggesting that they only want portion of the property to be listed, how would that work? Is that legally, how would we do that to comply with the requirements under the legislation?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The entire place, as in the address, would be listed, but in the statement of significance of the place, it refers to the respective portions of the site that have the heritage value. The City sought further advice from the Department of Heritage in this respect following the submission that had been received from the college, and the Department confirmed the City's approach.
Thank you, Councillor Lees.
Yeah, so following on from that, so my understanding is the legislation requires us to list the whole place, or the place which is the whole lot, but there's the buildings that are not of heritage significance wouldn't be necessarily affected or require development approval for internal works.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And this, I suppose, goes back to the comment I made earlier about Regulation 8 within our planning regulations, is that it refers to a heritage place, but there are no prescriptive requirements in the regulations about how it's otherwise identified, which is why we sought that clarification from the Department of Heritage. It may help if I provide an example in practice. If a place is included in the heritage list, but only one portion or one building on that site contains the cultural heritage significance as identified in the Statement of Significance, the City would review the location of the proposed works on the site and how it related to that building. If it did not impact that building in any way, a determination could be issued. Whereas if the place impacted the conservation of that place or impacted on the building itself, we would be recommending that further heritage investigation or assessment be undertaken so we can determine how the proposed development impacts the heritage portion of the site and potentially amend the plans or request the applicant to amend the plans on the advice of that heritage consultant, which I believe is what Wesley College has undertaken in the past. They've had heritage consultants provide advice on works that have been undertaken on the site.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
Yeah, so following on from that, it was indicated that the Wesley College is on the state register. My understanding was that generally properties that are on the state register are then included on the local heritage list. Is that not the case?
Thank you, Director Shaw.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's typically the case because properties that are on the state register are afforded the highest level of significance, and so if they're on the state register, typically they're also identified on the local register, or the local list, sorry. But under the planning regulations, it does not state that properties that are on the state list must be included in the list. It's open to council to decide which properties it includes in its local list.
But that would be general practice. Yeah. Sorry, I have another question, Deputy Mayor. Does, just in relation to the impact of heritage listing and whether it has positive or negative implications, does the city offer any incentives for heritage listed places such as rates reductions or heritage grants? I know there was reference earlier in one of the deputations to state heritage grants, but I'm just wondering if the city has ever done that or could potentially be doing that.
Thank you, Director Shaw.
I thank you, Deputy Mayor. There are a number of ways that local governments can support its local heritage. First is waiving development application fees for heritage places. Some local governments offer reimbursement of works that are undertaken, or a portion of those, the costs associated with the works to be reimbursed where they've been undertaken in accordance with a development approval informed by a heritage consultant. Some local governments have competitions for heritage places and different grants available. The Department of Heritage provides grants for heritage places, but it's typically only places that are on the state register of places. The reason that the city hasn't recommended any of those measures to date through its budget process is that it does not have a heritage list. So we couldn't be able to advise the community which properties we would present grants for or to waive application fees for until we have a heritage list in place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Shaw. Councillors, do we have any more questions? No? Councillor Howland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I just indicate the questions that I'll be putting forward on notice? It will be specifically that question that you answered and suggested that a development application will be required in every instance, no matter the category under the Heritage Act. And secondly, the way within which the report that we've received from Council has defined in numerous places place as the relevant criteria as opposed to what's contained within the regulations. So I'll send those through. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that brings our questions to a close on this item. If somebody could go and get the Mayor.
Alrighty, thanks for waiting for me, folks. I assume that we're up to item 10.1.2 by now. Mr. Scott.
Item 10.1.2, proposed lease of lot 500 on deposited plan 430041 for a boat shed. This report recommends that Council consider the disposal of lot 500 on deposited plan 430041, South Perth, in brackets, the Wesley College boat shed site, by way of lease to Wesley College.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillors, do we have any questions for the administration on this item? I think Councillor Russell was first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarity, the existing lease over the existing boat shed, does that extend to the adjoining boat ramp?
Ms McDonald, should I send that your way or to Ms Shaw? Or to Ms Ampremo? Third time's the charm.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the existing lease covers the area of the existing building.
So can I just ask who owns that boat ramp and who's responsible for the maintenance of such?
So the boat ramp is used by Wesley College, and as far as I'm aware, they have undertaken the maintenance that's required on that. And part of their development approval, they're required to make good that area as well.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Russell?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the sequencing of the two leases because it's one's to be approved and one's to be surrendered. And the mechanisms are independent of each other. So is there a possibility that there would be no active lease on either property as they are independent?
Is that Ms Ampremo?
No, the intent would be that they have the lease until they decommission the existing building, and they would have the lease in place prior to starting construction of the new building.
Okay, thank you. Under policy P609, the lease for not-for-profit community associations, etc., the lease shall be a minimum of $1,000 per annum. What were the reasons the city came to $3,000 per annum for this lease proposal?
Ms McDonald?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With reference to policy 609, the closest tenant category matched to Wesley was the not-for-profit sporting organisations. This considers their organisational structure and land use. Under this category, the annual rental range is $1,000 to $3,000. The city negotiated the highest rental amount based on the following: facility amenities, the shared use arrangement with Penrose College, Wesley College's revenue generating capacity, and Wesley College's capacity to hire to others.
Okay, thank you. Just a final question. So when the lease over the reserve, 24112, which is where the current boat shed is, when that's surrendered, does the objective or the land use, does that change from recreation boat shed and to some other land use?
Should I send that to Ms McDonald or Ms Ampremo? Ms McDonald.
Through Mr Mayor, we'll have to take that question on notice. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms McDonald. Councillor Russell, another question?
No.
All right. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With regard to this lease, it does include that the outgoings are to be incurred by the lessee. Just for clarification purposes, it includes council rates. Do we charge council rates with regard to this lease for this property?
Ms McDonald.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We'll take the question on notice.
All right. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Raison.
One of the things in the papers talked about construction, ongoing maintenance of a new sewer. I'm just interested in how that ties in with the lease. That work's been completed. Is that somewhere tied in as a condition, or is it an independent document? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Ms Ampremo, is that one you?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So there is a separate agreement directly with Wesley College relating to that. As part of the negotiations with Wesley College, given the city was building new public toilet facilities, we negotiated shared facilities, which obviously saved both parties costs, and that is subject to an ongoing agreement separate to the lease agreement.
Thank you, Ms Amprimo. Councillor Razan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any further councillors? Sorry, any further questions, councillors? And that's a no. All right. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.1.3, RFT 3/2025, provision of sport lighting upgrades at Challenger Reserve, George Burnett Park and Richardson Park. This report considers submissions received from the advertising of tender 3/2025 for the provision of sport lighting upgrades at Challenger Reserve, George Burnett Park and Richardson Park. This report will outline the assessment process used during the evaluation of the tenders received and recommend approval for the tender that provides the best value for money and level of service for the city.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Russell?
I do, and I'd like to ask that behind closed doors.
All right, I'll make a note of that. Any further questions, councillors, bearing in mind that there is a confidential attachment? No. Okay. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.1.4, RFT 4/2025, the provision of electrical services. This report considers submissions received from the advertising of tender 4/2025 for the provision of electrical services panel. This report will outline the assessment process used during the evaluation of the tenders received and recommend the approval of the tender that provides the best value for money and level of service to the city.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions on this item, bearing in mind that there is a confidential attachment? No. Councillor Howling?
My question is probably more general than what it is specific. What is the integrity process that you actually assess the individual tenders by? I realise you go through the criteria, but after you've gotten that, is there 3 separate people that do that, then come together and discuss who is the best placed, or what's your process, or do you have an individual, independent individual? So I'm just curious.
Ms Amprimo, can I send that in your direction?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So, given that the question is generally relating to process, there is an assessment done and different levels of approval required depending on the size of it. So it may be that we have someone external to the organisation as a consultant advisor in the assessment if it's a particularly complex evaluation. If it's fairly routine work, then we'll have people from within the organisation who independently assess it and then come together at a consensus meeting to discuss their evaluations.
Thank you, Ms Amprimo.
So can I just ask one more supplementary through you, Mr Mayor?
Proceed.
Is that set by a monetary limit or a complexity limit? And if it's complexity, how is that then determined?
Ms Amprimo?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So it would be a complexity question depending on the skill and expertise that we have internally to assess it. So, for example, a tender that is unique, something that we wouldn't routinely do, we would probably seek external advice on aspects of assessing that. And if it is such as the one that's before council in this meeting, that's fairly routine in nature. We have people with the expertise to understand and assess the technical submissions, and we would do that in-house.
Thank you, Ms Amprimo.
And through you, Mr Mayor, one last question. Perhaps this is an audit governance question more than anything. If there's significant differences in weighting, how do you reconcile those? And I'm grateful, Mr Mayor.
Ms Amprimo?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So there is criteria or descriptions against each different scoring. So if there is a significant difference in how one person has scored against someone else, then each person would be asked to explain what the rationale was for them providing their score. So generally what that would look like is someone who's given a particularly high score would have to go back through the submission and say which aspects of that submission led them to having a particularly high score. And generally what will happen is if the person who's scored low, they'll say, oh, they may have missed something in the submission when they did their assessment, or they saw something different in it to the other, and then there would have to be a conversation, and that's why there's a consensus meeting, because the different evaluators then have to come to an understanding as to why there's different scoring. But there is descriptors against, if you score someone a 5, that has a particular description as to how they've met the criteria. If you score them a 6, there's a description around there. So everybody is assessing based on same criteria.
Thank you, Ms Ambremo.
Thank you for the liberty.
Councillors, any further questions for the administration on this item? No. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.3.1, proposed home business, in brackets, art and tattoo studio, Lot 2, number 71 Strickland Street, South Perth. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a home business, in brackets, art and tattoo studio, on Lot 2, number 71 Strickland Street, South Perth. The item is referred to Council given the impact of the proposal on the general amenity of the area. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions to the administration on this item? Councillor Howling.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, to again Ms Shaw. Did you take the opportunity at all to go to the site as opposed to just having a look at it from photography or aerial photography?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I haven't been out on site, but the officers that undertook the assessment have, and have seen how steep the driveway is.
Yes. Thank you, and through you, Mr Mayor, if I may, in terms of the steepness on the driveway and the ingress and egress, was there anybody that made any comment in respect to the potential safety exiting that site onto Strickland Street?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it is a relevant planning consideration. Typically under the codes, you would need to be able to exit in a forward gear more than 15 metres. The driveway is approximately 30 metres till it gets to the end. And if somebody was parked in the space at the end, it would be difficult to turn around and exit in a forward gear. When we had a look at that, the time at which the subdivision, I think, was undertaken was prior to those requirements. And so the site effectively doesn't have the truncations for sight lines at this point in time anyway. When we considered that, we had a look to see whether or not, on balance, based on the number of clients attending the property, would be beyond what a normal residential property would typically have in terms of guests visiting the site. And we formed the view that if the owner had a guest visiting the site, they may reverse out of the property in any instance. So it wasn't beyond what would otherwise be considered for a client to attend the property, but it is a relevant planning consideration, and Council could resolve to refuse the application on that basis.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, recognising under Regulation 67 that safety is a relevant consideration, and that the driveway is 30 metres in length without a turnaround area at the top, why hasn't safety expressly been included within the report that we've got before us now, when that was on a development application, when that was recognised as one of the problems associated with development? Now, I'm not talking about the 1970s subdivision, I'm talking about what's before us today, and that's the development application.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the city could have included that in the amenity of the locality, but I think given the separation between the lot boundary itself and where you would otherwise enter onto the street, we didn't include that in the assessment in the body of the report. So we were satisfied that that was a concern that was suitable and recommended for approval. It wasn't something that was raised specifically by the submissions from memory. Yep. So the city is satisfied that if a vehicle exited the site in reversing, there are sufficient sight lines between the lot boundary itself and the road carriageway that we were satisfied that the volume of traffic associated with one client a day wouldn't be beyond what would otherwise be expected for a residential property. However, it is something that council could consider and instead resolve to refuse the application on that basis because it is a relevant planning consideration.
Thank you, Ms Shaw.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I accept, or it has to be accepted that this is a new development application, not residents who are living there. Did you specifically have a safety ingress and egress, traffic safety study and sight lines? Were they expressly undertaken by members of your staff?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes? Yes, the city's engineering services reviewed that.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr Mayor. Last question. I take it that if a question or notice, if I asked for it, I would be able to receive it. Traffic safety study and the sight lines.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, to clarify, there was no separate study undertaken. The application was referred to the city's engineering services who undertook a review of the proposal. So the applicant has not submitted a separate traffic study or safety report in support of the application.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, any further questions for the administration? Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Given there were 6 objections to the proposal received, is it possible that the council could approve the home occupation for a period of 1 year and then after that time consider its further approval based on how it's operated during that time and if there have been any issues in terms of the amenity of the adjoining landowners?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, council could include a condition that has a temporary approval period. The city advises against that because typically you would consider whether or not a development application is suitable for approval or not. And if council has formed the view that the proposal is not suitable for approval for whatever reason, we would typically recommend that it should then be refused.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Lees, another question?
Yes, I do have another question. It's noted that the applicant initially proposed operating hours from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and after a revision, they changed it to only weekdays 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it's also noted that the sessions, the tattoo sessions, are 6 to 8 hours each. So I'm wondering if the applicant's given any reason for the earlier start of 8 a.m.
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think my understanding was that they were seeking if they couldn't operate on the weekends, then they would extend the trading hours during the weekdays.
Regardless of the fact that their sessions go for 6 to 8 hours anyway.
So the proposal includes items beyond the tattoo studio. So they do art commissioning, they also do animation, advertising and the like. So they were hoping to be able to operate that entire time.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Further question, Councillor Lees?
No, thank you.
All right. Councillors, any further questions for the administration? I think Councillor Russell put his hand up first there.
Thank you. Just assuming this DA doesn't include any signage, is that correct?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, that's correct. No signage.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor Razan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In recent conversations with the community, Strickland Street in particular is one where a number of residents have raised concerns about traffic management and parking. I'm happy to have this answered on notice. Is the administration aware of those concerns, and if so, have they been factored into the decision making and recommendation in this instance?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we are aware of those concerns, and that did come through through the submission period. We considered the volume of traffic associated with the number of clients anticipated to attend the property was in the capacity of the road network in terms of vehicle movements per day to accommodate. given it's likely one client attending per day. We acknowledge that there are existing car parking concerns on Strickland Street, but it is lawful to park on the road on Strickland Street as well. Typically, you would contain all car parking associated with the development application on the site, but we do acknowledge that there is on-street parking available. Car parking is a relevant planning consideration, so council could seek to resolve to refuse the application on the basis of car parking.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Razan. Councillor Howling, I think, was next.
Yes, thank you. In respect of where the location of this commercial enterprise as part of the residence is intended to be carried out, is that on a separate outbuilding or is it within the residence itself?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's within the building. They've effectively converted a front room to be set up as a studio.
Thank you, Ms Shaw.
Within the house?
Within the house, yes.
Any further questions, councillors? I think Councillor Razan was first.
It's more of a request, I think, is that if possible, I would appreciate receiving or knowing about businesses of this nature or other business prior approvals that council has previously approved.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we can provide information in regards to applications. One thing I will note, though, is that if an application is 20 square metres in terms of the space they're occupying, and it otherwise meets all of the other criteria in terms of what constitutes a home occupation, is that it's actually exempt from requiring development approval. So if this application was operating in a room that was 2 square metres smaller, they could have otherwise applied for a home occupation and carried out trading without approval from the local government.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr
you.
Mayor.
I think Councillor Prendeville was next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Referring to one of the tables on the report, when we talk about compatibility with its setting, amenity, character and all that sort of thing, is the nature of the business taken into consideration, or is it just that it's a home business with all the other aspects?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the nature of the business is taken into consideration. So, for example, if it doesn't generate significant noise or it doesn't have a lot of clients coming to and from the property, the hours of operation, they're the types of things that we consider in terms of whether it impacts the amenity of a property. So, for example, from time to time, you may have an application for a home business for a mechanic to operate from home, and we would consider that that's not suitable given the noise generated from the activity. Whereas the noise effectively generated would be from the tattoo needle, which would a small buzzing sound inside. So we considered that it would not necessarily have an impact on the amenity of the surrounding locality. One thing that we also consider is whether it would be compatible in respect to what is typically used for a residential dwelling. So would the nature of this business be beyond how you would typically use a residential dwelling, notwithstanding the commercial nature of the activity, and that's when we again factor in matters such as noise and the availability of car parking and the like.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Howling.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Ms Shaw, is this in effect a retrospective application?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, they're not actually operating right now.
Thank you, Ms Shaw.
Sorry, just so that I understand that, Mr Mayor, are you saying they're not operating their business at all right now, or they're not operating from that location right now?
Ms Shaw.
Sorry. I've just been informed that they are operating, but not from this location. So it's not a retrospective application. They're seeking approval to operate from this location.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Another question, Councillor Howling.
Yeah, just one last. At what stage is the health regulations penetration of skin regs considered for the purpose of the approval of the location?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We would typically put an advice note on any determination notice advising of their requirements under the separate legislation, and so after development approval has been obtained, then they would seek any other necessary approvals.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, any further questions? No. Okay. Councillor Howling, I note you've still got your light on there. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.3.2, proposed scheme amendment number 2 to local planning scheme number 7, rezoning to residential lot 1, number 3, 3rd Avenue, Kensington. The purpose of this report is for council to consider a scheme amendment number 2 to local planning scheme number 7 to rezone lot 1, number 3, 3rd Avenue, Kensington, from local centre with additional use of recreation-private to residential with the applicable density coding of R17.5.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is the variation from the surrounding R15 zoning. So this property is proposed to be zoned R17.5, while the surrounding properties are all R15, except for obviously the commercial or local centre property. What implications does the city believe that will have in terms of built form, and what was the thought process in supporting that variation from surrounding properties?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The average lot size requirement for R15 is 666 square metres, and the average lot requirement for an R17.5 is 571 square metres. So if you were to do the calculation just based on the average land area alone, if they were to apply for an R15 coding, they would be 315 square metres short of being able to subdivide into 3 lots. Whereas if they go for the R17.5, with the parent lot area, they'd be able to potentially subdivide into 3 lots. In terms of the built form outcome, both R17.5 and both R15 are assessed against Part B of the residential design codes, and so we would be assessing them against the same regardless. So it's effectively just a result of the number of dwellings that you would otherwise be able to achieve by slightly increasing the density.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Another question, Councillor Les?
No, I think that's okay. So, sorry, yes. The average lot size in the area, what would that be? I'm not sure if you may have just mentioned that.
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The average lot size in the area isn't necessarily reflective of what the current R codes requirements are. So the average lot size under the current R codes requirements for R15 is 666 square metres, whereas a lot of the lots that were around the area, I think around from 5 to 800, it just varies depending on at what point in time they were created.
Thank you, Ms Shaw.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Noting that this is a standard amendment to the scheme, does that automatically trigger a community consultation?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that's correct. So community consultation is required for 42 days. 42 days.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions, councillors, on this item? No. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.4.1, Chief Executive Officer Evaluation Committee. This report seeks the appointment of elected members to the Chief Executive Officer Evaluation Committee and the appointment of the presiding and deputy presiding members.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions on this item? Nope. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.4.2, Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. This report seeks the appointment of elected members to the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee for the period of 28 October 2025 to 16 October 2027.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions? Nope. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.4.3, Appointment of Community Members to the City of South Perth Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. This report seeks Council's endorsement of the recommended independent members for the City of South Perth Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions? Bearing in mind that there is a confidential attachment? No. Okay. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.4.4, City of South Perth Arts Advisory Group. This report seeks the appointment of 2 elected members to the City of South Perth Arts Advisory Group for the period 28th of October 2025 to the 16th of October 2027.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a general question. in relation to this committee and the next couple of committees, where we talk about the how they have been formed to tie in with the strategic community plan. I'd be interested just to know how that process, because it looks to me like they're very general. One's, if we just go down, let's say on page, which one? Let's look at page 51. And under the strategic implications, it's under the direction that we've got an arts group is under leadership and receptive to meeting the needs of the community. Similarly, the next one, page 53, it's the same, it's meeting the needs of the community. Next one's the same, needs of our community. And yeah, just taking those three, how were they developed? Because it's a very general kind of, I guess, descriptor of the needs of our community, and we've slotted in under arts and then crime and so on.
Ms. Shaw. Or, okay, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those relate, they're actions from our strategic community plan, and the plan is formulated from community feedback, and council endorses those strategic directions. We're actually in the process of commencing a further review of that, so council will have an opportunity to provide input and advice on what the new strategic directions for the city will be going forward. So they're just effectively the most related to the different advisory groups. They don't specifically relate to the content of those advisory groups, rather in terms of leadership and including the community in providing advice to inform future decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Councillors, any further questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Mr. Scott.
Item 10.4.5, City of South Perth Community Safety and Crime Prevention Advisory Group. This report seeks the appointment of 2 elected members to the City of South Perth Community Safety and Crime Prevention Advisory Group for the period of 28 October 2025 to the 16th of October 2027.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any questions on this item, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr. Scott.
Item 10.4.6, City of South Perth Inclusive Community Advisory Group. This report seeks the appointment of an elected member to the City of South Perth Inclusive Community Advisory Group for the period of 28th of October 2025 to the 16th of October 2027.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillors, any questions? No. Next item, please, Mr. Scott.
Item 10.4.7, Local Emergency Management Committee for Canning / South Perth. This report seeks the appointment of 2 elected members to the Local Emergency Management Committee for Canning / South Perth for the period of 28th of October 2025 to 16th of October 2027.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr. Scott.
Item 10.4.8, City of South Perth Public Health Advisory Group. This report seeks the appointment of an elected member to the City of South Perth Public Health Advisory Group for the period of 28th of October 2025 to the 16th of October 2027.
Any questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr. Scott.
Item 10.4.9, West Australian Local Government Association South East Metropolitan Zone. This report seeks the appointment of elected members as delegates and deputy delegates to the West Australian Local Government Association South East Metropolitan Zone for the period of 28th of October 2025 to the 16th of October 2027. It also seeks to appoint the Chief Executive Officer as an additional deputy delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillors, any questions? No? Next item, please, Mr. Scott.
Item 10.4.10, Metropolitan Inner Development Assessment Panel. This report seeks the appointment of elected members to the Metropolitan Inner Development Assessment Panel for the period of 27th of January 2026 to the 26th of January 2028.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillors, any questions? No. Next item, please.
Item 10.4.11, Listing of Payments for September 2025. This report presents to Council the list of accounts paid under delegated authority between 1 September 2025 to the 30th of September 2025 for information. It also includes the purchase card transactions between 1 August 2025 and 31st of August 2025 in line with legislative requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillors, any questions? No. Next item, please.
Item 10.4.12, monthly financial statements, September 2025, and carried forward budget adjustments. The monthly financial statements are provided with attachments A to I, with high-level analysis contained in the comments of this report. The detail of the carried forward budget adjustments are provided with attachments J to K. Commentary and a high-level analysis are contained in the report.
Thank you, Mr Scott. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Hopefully just a very straightforward general question. So if you do need a bit more, I suppose, interrogation, happy to take this question on notice. But just with regard to the all the budget items that have been adjusted for on page 52 of the attachments, could I just get clarification with regard to those budget adjustments that they were part of a carryover for from the previous year into the current year? Is that the reason for those adjustments?
Mr Lecoq?
Yeah.
Through the Mayor, yeah, that's correct. It is part of a carry forward. I'm assuming you're referring to the revenue items. Yeah. My anticipation would be that what you probably noticed is that there's a rather big bulk of them, and that directly relates to the RAF funding that we've received that is actually funding the underlying projects. So it's virtually a one-for-one match in terms of the cost versus the funding.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq, and thank you, Mr Mayor. Sorry, just to add another follow-up question. So just for clarity as to how the spreadsheet works, there's obviously the capital adjustments on page 52 increasing, and also corresponding adjustments for, I think most of the similar items on page 53, which were decreasing. So increase and a decrease for the same line items for the same amounts. Could I just have an understanding as to how that works, please?
Mr Lecoq.
Through the Mayor. So the first set of increases that you see are referring to revenue. So it's an upward adjustment of revenue coming in, i.e. increasing the surplus. The second set that you are seeing is expenditure increasing, i.e. a decrease in surplus.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.5.1, Quarterly Activity Report. This report outlines recent activities undertaken by the City of South Perth relating to risk management, business continuity and workforce health and safety, and an overview of activities planned.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Mr Scott.
Item 10.5.2, Audit Register Progress Report, fourth quarter update. This report provides an update on the progress of actions included in the Audit Register. The Audit Register includes all open audit findings and have previously been accepted by the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee and Council.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? No. And final item, at least for item 10, Mr Scott.
Item 10.5.3, Policy Review. The terms of reference of the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee includes responsibility for reviewing the City's policies. A number of policies are now presented for the consideration of the committee and referral to Council for adoption.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No. Okay. And that brings us to the end of item 10. Item 12 is motions of which previous notice has been given. That's nil for this evening. Item 15 is meeting close to the public. And I am conscious that Councillor Russell indicated that he'd like to ask a question, I assume, about the confidential material on item 10.1.3. So I'm just going to give governance a moment to close the door and take us offline. There's no one left in the public gallery, but for those who are listening via YouTube, we'll have to part ways now. But if it makes you feel any better, the only item after this is closure, so you're not missing anything. I'll give everyone a moment. Good to go? All right. So for those of you who are still listening, we've just finished off item 15. That brings us to item 16, which is closure. Before I close the meeting, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation. I declare the meeting closed at 8:25 p.m. Thank you all and good night.